There we have Real Railroads, episode 25, which covered two southern GW properties. Last episode I mentioned that I was going to be covering the Valdosta Railroad. Well, Valdosta there's not enough on Valdosta. It's not long enough to warrant its own video. It was a quite short script, so I added another railroad. We'll get to that in a few minutes. The last 2 weeks, Valdosta Railroad has been mentioned in the coverage of the Georgia and Florida and the Carter-Perot RailNet. Valdosta has 4 railroads that serve the city. Carter-Perot RailNet, which interchanges NS and runs north through Nashville to Willacoochee, CSX and NS, which run east-west through Valdosta, and Valdosta Railway, which is based out of Clatteville, Georgia, but interchanges with the CSX and NS in Valdosta, along with having most of their industries there. The line that operates today was built by the Florida, Midland, and Georgia Railroad, which eventually merged into the Georgia and Florida Railroad. That company sold the line from Valdosta, Georgia to Madison, Florida in 1951 to the Valdosta Southern Railroad, aka VSO. The VSO abandoned the track south of Clatteville, Georgia in 1972. This small remnant was acquired by Rail Management and Consulting Corporation, which formed the Valdosta Railway in 1992. This continued under that owner until 2005 when it was acquired by Genesee, Wyoming. As of the last information I could find, the VR operates with SW 1200-3, number 1200, built in 1964 as SSW 1062, which became Southern Pacific 2250, and then LDRR 1200. It has apparently been upgraded to microprocessor control since it's designated SW 1200-3. Their second locomotive, supposedly assigned to the line, is Chattahoochee Industrial SW 1554, which was built in 1970 as Apalachicola Northern 719 and then became CIRR 719 before being repainted and renumbered to CIR 1554 and being transferred to the VR. Starting from the headquarters in Clatteville, the main along Railroad Avenue going southwest of Clatteville is used for car storage. There are 2 sidings in Clatteville also used for storage. Just beyond the yard office is a Y that the tail end serves Packaging Corporation of America's containerboard mill that receives tank cars and box cars on 9 tracks. Pulpwood is delivered by truck and turned into wood chips on site. Paper is a huge commodity in the South. I believe this is the 5th railroad that I have covered that serves at least one large paper mill. From here, the main runs north, crossing I-75, heading northeast and then north into Valdosta. The first industries they come to is a facing point switch that is a long spur serving both Georgia Petroleum and Brentag Mid-South Incorporated. Georgia Petroleum receives petroleum products and tank cars, and Brentag receives chemicals and tank cars. Just north of this is another spur that passes buildings that are not labeled anything that is mentioned on an industry list. North of this is another spur that goes to a business that might be Market Bag. This is also not listed as an industry. Next is a spur that west of the main that serves CJB Industries, a chemical manufacturer that receives tank cars and covered hoppers, and immediately north of that switch is a spur to the east that serves TM Polyfirm, a business dealing in plastic and rubber products receiving covered hoppers. The railroad then crosses the divided highway, Gil Harbin Industrial Boulevard, and to the west is Stanley Hay, which receives, of all things, boxcars loaded with hay bales. The strange things you find in railroads. You can actually model a business that receives hay in boxcars. I live in farming country, and I never in a million years would have expected to find an industry that received hay bales by rail. Shortly north of this is our final customer, Southland Forest Products, which loads wood chip hoppers. They have a huge 1,000 by 3,000 foot pulpwood yard. This appears to also make lumber, as there are stacks of lumber to be loaded into tracks. North of this is Old Clatteville Road, which is a 5-track yard. At the north end a track veers off to the west where it crosses Middleton Road with a Y. MYDDLETON. Anything to be different. With a siding. The VR joins CSX on a siding, and a ways to the west is a small yard. The VR connects with NS on the southwest leg of a Y, northwest of a 4-track yard. Just beyond the interchange is the Valdosta Diamond Railroad crossing, where the NS crosses CSX and interchanges with them. I think that's supposed to be where the Carter-Perot. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe a typographical error, and I'm not checking Google Maps in the middle of recording to see. Unfortunately, there isn't much to say in the Valdosta Railway. It's only 14 miles and serves only a few industries. Its frequencies are 160.590 and 160.680. SW 1200-3 is a heavily modified unit with an extra high nose for extended radiators, and a common feature for switchers used to haul heavy trains, usually of logs or pulpwood. This was rebuilt for its service to VR. When it served the Louisiana down Delta, it was a standard SW 1200. The office is a simple building with no real markings and doesn't look like much. It is a small railroad that I couldn't find operating days for. Paper mills often require daily switching, but the rest of the route wouldn't necessarily be switched every day. Since the Valdosta Railway didn't offer much to make a decent-sized video, I'm going to do 2 railroads in one video. The next one is fairly long, but only has 2 listed industries and is barely hanging on. Located in the panhandle of Florida is Genesee Owing's Aen Railway. This was formerly known as the Apalachicola Northern and only connects with Rail USA's... I thought that was Patriot Rail. I'm going to have to correct a future script. I had wrote that down as Patriot Rail in a future script. Oops. Hang on. Okay. Patriot Rail, Rail USA, they're both patriotic names. Easy to get those confused. It owns 119 miles, but this is likely its entire length to Port St. Joe, Florida, which the railroad hasn't served since 2010. Ironically, this is listed as its headquarters. The AN only operates from the FGAR interchange in Chattahoochee south to Tulogia and south of Route 20. The rest of the line has been washed out in several places and is no business. However, I trace this line, as the video goes on, I trace this line and find there's no washouts, but that could have been, the images from Google Maps could have been taken before the washouts happened, or they might have repaired the washouts. I'm not sure. I didn't really see any place that they could have washed out. In Chattahoochee, as mentioned in the episode of the Florida Gulf and Atlantic, the Aen Railway is a 5-track yard. This is used for interchange and railcar storage. The Aen parallels the FGAR for a ways, then swings southwest through the woods, coming to a small settlement along Route 268. It then crosses under I-10, running through trees and fields to reach Greensboro, where there is a rough-looking siding before going into rural Florida again. The next location is an abandoned pulpwood yard with a siding less than a mile down the track. Less than a mile down the track is a spur of the Georgia Pacific Corporation, where this plant makes oriented strand board, OSB, and using boxcars and center beam flat cars. About 2 miles south is the community of Hosford, Florida, where Georgia Pacific is listed as being. Beyond Hosford, the railroad parallels Route 65 as it crosses a wide creek on a trestle with Tulogia a mile from Hosford. In Tulogia, there is supposed to be Rex Lumber, which loads cross ties. However, the only thing I could find is an abandoned sawmill with a spur. There is a siding that looks like a transload, but is clearly not used. Beyond the old sawmill, is the rest of the line south. This is passable for quite a ways through the Apalachicola National Forest. However, one of the National Forest roads looks like they bury the rails in dirt. Other than that, the right-of-way looks in excellent condition all the way through Sumatra. There is a siding south of Sumatra. Problems could be with the wooden bridges, but with no business, it doesn't much matter. The roughest-looking bridge from Google Maps is a very long wooden bridge over the delta that contains the East River and St. Mark's River twice. There are multiple bridges across this delta, which includes a total of 6 crossings of the St. Mark's River and an ancient swing bridge over the Apalachicola River to reach Franklin. The branch to the Apalachicola, Florida, was removed before the main beyond Tulogia was shuttered in 2010. In Port St. Joe, there is a vacant cement lot that had some sort of mill that had a 7-track yard. The Y is overgrown. In fact, the line is overgrown beyond Cecil G. Costin Sr. Boulevard, just outside of Port St. Joe. There was another industry west of the Y. The AN runs on Wednesdays using Chattahoochee Industrial SW SW 1500 or 1555, which was built as Apalachicola Northern 716 and went to the Chattahoochee Industrial as 716, before getting repainted as Chattahoochee Industrial 1555. It seems that Georgia Pacific is their only industry by looking at Google Maps, unless that Rex Lumber is new or just loads cars at a space that's not labeled. Hopefully, this dying railroad gets a new business. With how the lumber industry is going, the OSB plant could close any day. This concludes this week's episode of Real Railroads, the hopefully weekly show talking about the real railroads in North America. Tune in next week to learn about another railroad in the South.